No one ever taught you how to think. They taught you how to obey, how to memorize, how to chase approval, but not how to slow down, question, and think with clarity. And that's why most people panic under pressure, drown in emotion, and follow the crowd, even when it destroys their peace. Stoic philosophy was built to fix this, not with empty quotes, but with sharp tools to train your mind like a muscle. It teaches you how to control your focus, how to pause before you speak, how to act with purpose when everything feels chaotic. As Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. That's not a suggestion, it's a skill. In this video, you'll learn 10 Stoic principles that rewire your thinking, strengthen your self-control, and help you live with calm in a loud, reactive world. So if you're done letting the world think for you, hit like, subscribe, and let's rebuild your mind from the inside out.
Number 1.
Distinguish what's in your control. Everything begins to change the moment you draw a clear line between what's in your control and what isn't. Most people never make this distinction. They spend their entire lives trying to bend the external world to their will, chasing approval, clinging to outcomes, obsessing over what others think. But the Stoics saw through this illusion. They understood that peace doesn't come from controlling the world. It comes from controlling your response to it. Epictetus, once a Roman slave who became one of the most respected Stoic teachers, made this principle the core of his teachings. He said, some things are up to us and some things are not. That's not just philosophy, it's a survival skill. Because the moment you begin acting like everything is your responsibility, you collapse under the weight of the uncontrollable. But when you return to what's truly yours, your thoughts, your actions, your attitude, you step back into your power. Let's make it real. Consider Sarah Blakely, the founder of Spanx. When she started, she didn't have connections, investors, or any background in fashion, and she was rejected by nearly every manufacturer and investor she pitched to. But instead of fixating on the gatekeepers, she narrowed her focus to what she could control, improving her product, refining her message, sharpening her persistence. She understood a simple Stoic truth. While you cannot force acceptance, you can earn it through effort. That clarity gave her an edge. Eventually, the results followed, not because she forced them, but because she mastered the process. This principle applies everywhere. In relationships, are you trying to control how others treat you or how you carry yourself? In your work, are you attached to the outcome or are you committed to the process? The Stoics weren't indifferent to success. They simply refused to anchor their peace to it. They knew success comes and goes, but self-mastery is permanent. Now here's what most people miss. Practicing this mindset isn't passive. It's not about giving up. It's about filtering your energy, reclaiming your time, and directing it with precision. You stop trying to fight the storm, and you become still within it. That stillness is power, not loud, not flashy, but unshakable. And this is why the Stoic mind remains steady in chaos. Not because life gets easier, but because they've stopped expecting it to be. They don't demand certainty, they demand clarity. When you stop wasting energy on things you can't command, you free up power to master what you can. Your breathing, your words, your posture, your next choice. So ask yourself right now, what are you holding on to that was never yours to control in the first place? Let it go, then take all that mental noise, all that wasted tension, and bring it back to the only place where true power lives, your own mind.
Number 2.
Practice morning self-examination. Every morning gives you two paths. You can wake up and instantly react, scroll through messages, get pulled by headlines, let your thoughts scatter, or you can take command before the world gets a grip on you. The Stoics knew which one leads to strength. They began each day by looking inward, not outward, not to feel good, but to get clear, not to avoid chaos, but to be ready for it. This practice is called premeditatio malorum, the premeditation of evils. But don't misunderstand the word evil. The Stoics weren't brooding pessimists. They were mental athletes. They trained their minds like fighters train their bodies. By simulating impact before it arrives, they imagined what could go wrong. Not to suffer twice, but to suffer less. To suffer with control, not confusion. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled the Roman Empire while battling illness, betrayal, and personal loss, wrote this in his private journal. When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, "Today I will meet people who are meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly." He didn't write it in bitterness, he wrote it with clarity. So when those people showed up, as they always do, he wouldn't be shaken. He'd already rehearsed his calm. He could carry out his duties not by emotion, but by principle. And that's the power of this practice. You remove the element of surprise, the rude comment, the delay, the broken plan. When it happens, you're not caught off guard because you've already seen it. And more importantly, you've already chosen how to respond. Not with reactivity, but with reason. Tim Ferriss, author of The 4-Hour Workweek, is one of the modern voices who uses this Stoic method every morning. He calls it fear setting. He writes down his worst-case scenarios and outlines what he would do if they happened. This daily practice doesn't increase anxiety. It drains it. Because what we name, we can face, and what we face, we begin to master. The exercise becomes a quiet form of control. We make a mistake when we assume peace comes from avoiding problems. It doesn't. Peace comes from being prepared for them. A Stoic doesn't run from discomfort. They greet it in advance, and that preparation becomes a shield, not against reality, but against being emotionally unprepared for it. You don't erase difficulty, you train for it. So tomorrow morning, don't just wake up, prepare. Ask yourself, what resistance might I face? Who might test my patience? What flaw in me might get triggered today? Then go further. Ask, who do I want to be in response? Don't wait for life to decide what kind of day you'll have. Decide first, then walk into the world with the stillness of someone who's already seen the storm and chosen not to flinch.
Number 3.
Amor Fati love your fate. What if your pain isn't in the way, but is the way? What if everything that feels like a setback is actually an invitation to grow? To the Stoics, nothing in life was wasted. Every event, every loss, every disappointment, every wound was part of a larger training. Not to break you, but to build you. That mindset wasn't naive acceptance. It was radical ownership, and they had a name for it. Amor Fati, the love of fate. But let's be clear, Amor Fati doesn't mean pretending everything is pleasant. It doesn't mean celebrating suffering or romanticizing failure. It means looking reality in the eye and saying, even this I will use, instead of asking, why me? You ask, how can I rise through this? Amor Fati is the quiet strength to see what happened and still say yes to life. Not because it's easy, but because it's yours to carry, yours to shape. Frida Kahlo embodied this. After surviving a bus crash that left her with lifelong pain and disability, she could have withdrawn. She could have disappeared in bitterness. But instead, she painted. She turned her broken body into bold imagery. She transformed her pain into color, contrast, and truth. Her art was raw, not in spite of her suffering, but because of it. Her trauma didn't silence her. It sharpened her voice. That's Amor Fati in action. The willingness to take your deepest wounds and turn them into your deepest beauty. Now contrast that with how most people react. A rejection becomes a wall, a failure becomes a full stop. But to a Stoic, that's where the work begins. You turn toward what hurt you, you face what you'd rather avoid, and you make it meaningful? Marcus Aurelius, writing from a place of exhaustion and grief, said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." That's not metaphor. That's method. Your pain isn't a punishment. It's the path. And more importantly, Amor Fati is not a one-time mindset. It's a daily posture. Every morning you wake up and remind yourself, whatever happens today, I won't just endure it, I'll work with it. Whether it's a canceled plan, a betrayal, a broken dream, you don't flinch, you adapt, you transform. You practice loving not just the easy moments, but the ones that ask the most of you. So ask yourself, what are you still resisting? What part of your past have you refused to integrate? What trial are you waiting to get through instead of learning from? Amor Fati teaches you to stop waiting for life to go your way, and instead, to walk your path with open eyes and a ready heart. Don't just accept fate, love it, and watch how even your scars begin to shine.
Number 4.
Separate emotions and actions. You are not your emotions. Let that settle. You feel them, yes, but you are not controlled by them unless you choose to be. The Stoics taught this distinction with brutal clarity. Emotions are automatic, but actions are chosen. And this single idea, if practiced daily, can protect your peace from being hijacked by a single moment of anger or fear. They didn't tell you to suppress what you feel. Stoicism is not about becoming cold. It's about becoming composed. Anger, sadness, anxiety. They are natural, but when you react without reflection, you hand over the steering wheel of your life to a temporary emotion. The Stoics offered a different path. Pause, observe, then act. That pause, however small, is everything. Epictetus taught, it's not things that disturb us, but our judgments about things. That insight separates the wise from the reactive. It's not the event that breaks you, it's the meaning you attach to it, and the response you choose afterward. Between what happens and what you do lies a space, and in that space is your sovereignty. Viktor Frankl, though not a Stoic by tradition, lived by this principle. After enduring unthinkable suffering in Nazi concentration camps, he later wrote, "Between stimulus and response, there is a space. In that space is our power to choose our response. In our response lies our growth and our freedom." He wasn't writing theory. He was describing how he survived spiritually intact, even when everything external was taken. And consider Oprah Winfrey. Early in her career, she faced public humiliation, racism, and dismissal. She could have lashed out. She could have broken down. But instead, she paused. She held her emotions like weather, real but passing. Then she acted with precision, not from impulse but from principle. That's not weakness. That's power under control. Here's the truth. Emotions will always knock at your door, but you don't have to invite them in to rearrange the furniture. You can notice them, acknowledge them, and still choose your next step with wisdom. That's what Stoicism demands. Not emotional suppression, but emotional separation. You feel fully, but you act deliberately. So the next time rage flares or fear tightens its grip, pause. Don't deny what you feel, but don't obey it blindly either. Ask, is this action mine, or is it just the echo of my emotion? Because if you let every feeling dictate your response, you'll live a life of regret. But if you pause just long enough, you become a different kind of person. A person ruled not by reaction, but by reason. And that's where strength lives, not in silence, not in denial, but in the calm decision to act from who you are, not from what you feel.
Number 5.
Practice keeping your silence. Silence is not the absence of thought. It's the presence of mastery. In a world addicted to reaction, noise, and performance, silence feels like weakness. But to the Stoics, silence was strength. It wasn't just the refusal to speak, it was the decision not to waste your energy on the unnecessary, not to feed chaos, not to fight battles that don't deserve your spirit. Seneca once warned, "Speech when it is restrained shows wisdom. When it is unrestrained, it shows folly." Most people speak to fill a gap, not in the room, but in themselves. They speak from discomfort, from ego, from the fear of being misunderstood. But the wise have learned something different. Silence can say more than words ever could. It's not that they have nothing to say, it's that they've learned not everything needs to be said. Consider Keanu Reeves. Despite his fame and success, he's known for his stillness. He listens more than he talks. He doesn't perform for the spotlight. And yet, when he speaks, people lean in. Why? Because his silence gives his words weight. He's not fighting to be heard. He's already rooted in presence. That's Stoic. That's what silence builds. Not just mystery, but credibility. Silence also protects your energy. When someone insults you, challenges you, or pokes at your pride, your first instinct may be to respond, to defend, to retaliate. But silence rewrites that script. It reminds you, just because someone wants a reaction doesn't mean they deserve one. You don't owe anyone your peace. You don't owe everyone your words. More importantly, silence is not only external, it's internal. The Stoic doesn't just quiet their mouth, they quiet their mind. They observe the emotion rise and let it settle before acting. They use silence as a mirror to see themselves more clearly. That's why silence is not passive, it's powerful. It's how you reclaim your attention before the world scatters it. Marcus Aurelius practiced this when he journaled each morning. He wasn't performing, he was pausing, listening to his own mind before letting the noise of the world in. That discipline helped him remain steady while ruling an empire. He knew the value of a composed mind, and that silence was not absence, it was presence, purified. So the next time you feel the urge to interrupt, to justify, to explain, try silence instead. Let the other person speak. Let the moment breathe. Let your restraint carry the message. I am not ruled by noise. I choose my words with care. Because once you practice silence long enough, you realize your words are weapons, and the fewer you use, the sharper they become. And sometimes the strongest statement you'll ever make is the one you choose not to say. Number 6, accept the uncertainty of life. Most people don't fear the future. They fear not being in control of it. They fear not knowing how things will turn out, not being able to predict the next step. But the truth, as the Stoics saw it, is this: control is an illusion. The only thing we ever truly hold power over is how we show up today. Everything else, fate, timing, circumstance, lives in uncertainty. And that's not a weakness of life. It's the structure of it. To fight uncertainty is to exhaust yourself. To flow with it is to unlock peace. The Stoics train their minds to accept that the future is never guaranteed, that nothing lasts forever, that even the most stable things are subject to change. And rather than be frightened by this, they chose to be free. Epictetus reminded his students, "Don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish for them to happen as they do, and your life will go smoothly." This wasn't passive acceptance, it was mental freedom. It was learning to anchor yourself not to outcomes, but to inner stability. One of the most powerful tools the Stoics used to navigate uncertainty was memento mori, the daily remembrance of death. At first glance, it sounds grim, but it was never about dwelling on mortality. It was about sharpening focus, about remembering that every moment is on loan, that nothing is promised, not even tomorrow. When you truly accept this, you stop waiting. You stop delaying your presence. You stop assuming you have time, and you begin to live with urgency, clarity, and appreciation for now. Steve Jobs once said, "Remembering that I'll be dead soon is the most important tool I've ever encountered to help me make the big choices in life." He used this perspective not to spiral into fear, but to eliminate distraction, to return to what mattered, to create boldly and live deliberately. That's Stoicism applied in the modern world. To live like everything is temporary and yet still give your full effort to each passing moment. But here's where most people stumble. They confuse acceptance with indifference. They think surrendering to life's uncertainty means giving up. It doesn't. It means letting go of the illusion that you control outcomes and focusing instead on the integrity of your effort, on showing up with your full self, even when the result's unclear. Especially then. So when things don't go as planned, pause. When a door closes, breathe. When the future feels foggy, remind yourself. I was never promised certainty, only the chance to face it with courage. The Stoic doesn't demand guarantees. They meet unpredictability with preparation, with resilience, with gratitude, and with deep presence. Because when you stop needing life to be certain, you finally become steady. Not because the path is clear, but because your mind is. That is the root of all peace, embracing the unknown and walking forward anyway. Number 7, set internal goals, not external ones. The world teaches you to chase outcomes, the promotion, the praise, the applause, but the Stoics knew better. They knew that the moment your peace depends on results outside your control, you're already losing. That's why they didn't measure life by what they achieved, but by how they lived. What mattered wasn't the outcome, it was the intention, the discipline, the integrity. In other words, internal goals. An internal goal is something no one can take from you. It's how you show up, how you speak, how you persist when no one's watching. And it's in those quiet, invisible victories where your real power is built. External goals, on the other hand, are fragile. They depend on factors you can't command. Market conditions, public opinion, timing, luck. That's why chasing them creates anxiety. You're working hard, but you're tethered to what you can't control. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Just that you do the right thing, the rest doesn't matter." That's the essence of internal goals, aligning your effort with your values, not with outcomes. You can't always control the results, but you can always control the quality of your effort. And when you focus on that, you become unshakable. You become steady in both success and failure, because neither defines you. Consider Serena Williams. She's celebrated as one of the greatest athletes in history. But what truly set her apart wasn't just her victories, it was how she prepared. She was known for her obsessive commitment to her craft. Even when no tournament was in sight, her focus was never just on winning a title. It was on becoming the kind of person who earned it. And that's a Stoic mindset. She controlled what she could, her mindset, her practice, her presence, and let the outcomes unfold as they may. Now think about your own life. Are your goals something others must validate? Are you chasing things you hope will make you feel worthy? Or are you choosing goals that no one can see, but you feel in your soul? Goals like staying patient under pressure, being honest even when it's hard, following through even when no one applauds. These are the goals that shape your character, not just your resume. The Stoics didn't live to impress. They lived to improve. They understood that when your goal is internal, your progress is always within reach. You don't have to wait for permission. You don't have to wait for applause. You measure your growth by your effort, your discipline, your alignment with truth. So set goals that build who you are, not what you have. Focus on the inner scorecard, and you'll find that the life you want isn't something you chase. It's something you become. Number 8, community over individual. Modern culture teaches you to focus on yourself, your brand, your image, your success. But the Stoics taught the opposite, that true strength isn't built in isolation. It's forged in connection, in contribution, in the quiet recognition that you are not separate from the world. You are woven into it. Stoicism, at its core, is not just a philosophy of self-control. It's a philosophy of responsibility. To live well is to live in service. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most powerful men in history, could have ruled selfishly, but in his meditations, written for no audience but himself, he returned again and again to this truth. What injures the hive injures the bee, meaning your peace is not just your own, it is tied to the peace of others. Your discipline, your clarity, your virtue, they ripple outward. They influence every room you enter, every person you meet. You don't just live for yourself, you live as part of something greater. This doesn't mean you should please everyone. It means you live with awareness. You act with impact in mind. The Stoic doesn't ask only, what do I want? They also ask, how does this choice serve the whole? Because real power isn't about domination. It's about direction. It's about being the kind of person others can rely on. Someone who doesn't just think clearly, but acts responsibly. Take Fred Rogers, better known as Mr. Rogers. He wasn't a Stoic by name, but he lived its principles every day. He stepped into a television studio not to perform, but to serve, to teach children how to feel deeply without being ruled by those feelings, to show kindness without weakness, to lead with gentleness and truth. He wasn't loud, he wasn't flashy, but his presence changed people. That is Stoic leadership. Quiet, grounded, effective. The Stoics also warned about the dangers of isolation. Too much solitude distorts the mind. You begin to believe your own thoughts without testing them. That's why they practice dialogue, mentorship, and mutual correction. Not to conform, but to sharpen, because your mind becomes clearer in the presence of those who challenge you to grow. So ask yourself honestly, are your relationships only transactional? Do you show up to get or to give? Do you seek applause or do you seek alignment? Stoicism teaches that your strength becomes real only when it benefits others. Individual excellence means nothing if it stands alone. And in a world obsessed with self-advancement, you become rare when you lead with contribution. You become powerful when your life echoes beyond your own needs. Remember this, your discipline is not just for you, it's for your family, your community, your future. That's how you build a legacy, one aligned action at a time. Number 9, voluntary discomfort. In a world that promises comfort at every turn, heated seats, one-click orders, endless convenience, the idea of choosing discomfort sounds strange, even backwards. But to the Stoics, it was essential, because comfort, when constant, dulls the mind, and worse, it weakens the will. The Stoic trains himself not for ease, but for strength, and strength is built in hardship, especially the kind you choose. Voluntary discomfort is the practice of intentionally stepping into challenge, not recklessly, not for the sake of suffering, but to stay sharp, to remind yourself that you can endure, adapt, and remain in control. Even when things are hard, Seneca wrote, set aside a certain number of days, during which you shall be content with the scantiest and cheapest fare, with coarse and rough dress, saying to yourself all the while, is this the condition that I feared? He practiced living simply, even when he didn't have to, so that if misfortune ever came, it wouldn't catch him unprepared. This is the opposite of entitlement. It's preparation, it's strength in the face of the unknown. When you choose small doses of discomfort now, you build the inner stability to withstand greater storms later. Cold showers, fasting, waking early, holding eye contact, sitting in stillness when your mind wants to escape. These are not punishments, they are training grounds. They're where you learn that discomfort won't break you, it will build you. Consider David Goggins. He's not a Stoic by name, but his actions echo Stoic truth. a former Navy SEAL and ultra-endurance athlete, Goggins became known not just for physical feats, but for the mindset behind them. He deliberately seeks out pain, not for ego, but to condition his spirit, his discipline, his mental toughness, his composure under pressure. These weren't born in comfort. They were earned through voluntary hardship. Goggins lives a truth the Stoics knew well. The body grows through resistance, and so does the mind. But this isn't about chasing extremes. It's about regaining control. Because when you train yourself to do hard things on purpose, you're no longer afraid of life doing hard things to you. You become confident, not in what the day will bring, but in who you'll be when it arrives, in that quiet confidence. That's power. The Stoics understood that fear lives in the unknown, but once you expose yourself to it on your terms, it loses its grip. You turn the unfamiliar into the familiar. You move from avoidance to authority. You stop negotiating with pain, and you start working with it. So the next time you hesitate to stretch, to rise early, to face the cold or silence or effort, do it anyway. Remind yourself that comfort is a tool, not a goal, and that the path to resilience is not paved with ease, but with deliberate, chosen challenge. And each time you embrace discomfort with purpose, you teach your mind that strength is a choice, not a reaction. Number 10, continuously check and adjust your thinking. The Stoics never claimed to have all the answers. In fact, they warned against the most dangerous form of ignorance, the belief that you already understand everything, because what you don't question, you obey, and what you obey without examination controls you silently. That's why one of the most powerful practices in Stoicism isn't action. It's reflection, not once, but daily, because the mind, left unchallenged, hardens, and hardened minds don't grow. They merely react. To live wisely, you must treat your mind the way an artist treats his canvas. Not as something to complete, but something to refine over time. Marcus Aurelius, emperor, philosopher, student of life, began and ended each day not with celebration, but with inspection. His meditations are not a show of brilliance, but a private journal of relentless honesty. He wrote questions like, "Is this essential? And what is in my power?" Reminding himself over and over that clarity isn't found once. It is earned and re-earned through disciplined thought. This is the Stoics' mirror. Each evening ask, did I act from wisdom or impulse? Did I let emotion dictate my behavior? Did I follow truth or what was convenient? These aren't accusations. They're calibrations, because a disciplined mind isn't born. It's carved moment by moment like a sculpture. And every unchecked assumption is a piece of marble left untouched. Consider Charlie Munger, the longtime business partner of Warren Buffett. Known for his clarity and mental sharpness, Munger emphasized what he called inversion, thinking backwards instead of asking, what's right about this idea? He often asked, what could go wrong? He didn't trust his own thinking unless it had been tested from every angle. He knew that intellectual humility, like Stoicism, isn't weakness, it's security. Because what you confront, you can correct. This practice also protects you from subtle manipulation. When you examine your thoughts instead of reacting impulsively, you gain a buffer between stimulus and response. You stop being emotionally hijacked by news, insults, flattery, or fear. You create space, and in that space, freedom. That's where your sovereignty lives. Not in knowing everything, but in courageously questioning your own patterns. And yes, it's hard. Reflection forces you to sit with your ego, your inconsistencies, your unfinished business. But the Stoic doesn't fear discomfort. He uses it, because discomfort, when faced with awareness, leads to wisdom. So don't just think about how you think, track it, write it, revise it, challenge your conclusions. Because your life will only rise to the level of your mind, and your mind will only rise to the level of your examination. And just like physical strength fades without effort, so does mental sharpness. That's why the Stoics didn't reflect when they had time. They made time, because when your thinking gets lazy, your life becomes reactive. But when your thinking is active, examined, and clean, you become dangerous in the best way. Calm, clear, and unshakable. You weren't taught how to think, only how to react, obey, and compare. But the Stoics offer another way, a path of clarity, of inner stillness, of mastery over mind and moment. These 10 principles are not just ideas, they're tools to reclaim your peace, sharpen your judgment, and rise above the noise of the world. But tools only work if you use them, so choose one today, apply it, test it in silence, and let the results speak for themselves. If this video helped you think differently, like and subscribe. We're just getting started.